So many great, iconic lines in speculative fiction comes from transformed or cursed life. I never drink. Why? That chilling line from Bela Lugosi's Dracula, the definitive Dracula, still echoes across vampire lore today. Or take zombies. Whether it's Night of the Living Dead or 28 Days Later, the moaning, shuffling hunger for brains has become cultural shorthand for the undead. And then there's the comic panel from Order of the Stick. Oh look, I regrew a finger. Guess which one it is? These moments work because transformed life has weight. It carries emotional, physical, and often moral consequences. A person changed into something else, whether it's a vampire, a werewolf, a lich, a revenant, instantly raises compelling questions. Why did they transform? How did it happen? Is there anything human left in them? Or is the transformation total? These are great themes to explore, and they can give your world a unique, eerie texture. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome to another episode of Creating Fantasy Species from Just in Time Worldbuilding with your host, Marie Mullaney. Let's start with the basics. What is transformed life? These are beings that once followed a natural life cycle. That might mean a biological cycle or a magical one or something more fantastical even. But at one point they were alive in a way that made sense within the natural order of their world. And then something happened. They died, or they were corrupted, or there was a magical mishap, a curse, a disease, or something changed them into a twisted, new form of life. One that now exists with different biological needs, rhythms, or even completely new laws of existence. Obviously, this includes undead creatures, vampires, mummies, zombies, and all the gloriously ghoulish variants you can think of. But transformed life doesn't stop with the undead. It can also include cursed beings, like a prince turned into a bear until he convinces a certain beauty to love him, or werewolves, ordinary people bitten and now doomed to become ravening wolfmen every full moon. You could even stretch it to more metaphysical transformations, like spiritual fusions. Imagine someone dying and merging with a spirit, becoming a new kind of post-life entity. Heck, it might even include divine transformations. Maybe when you die, if you were a good person, you're elevated to the status of an ancestral guide, joining the divine landscape of your culture. And that is also a kind of transformed life. Transformed life even includes the others from A Song of Ice and Fire, if we take the show's interpretation, which, okay, to be honest, isn't always reliable, but I think in this case, the others' backstory came straight from GRRM. Anyway, the others, or White Walkers, are the results of humans being transformed into winter-bound, terrifying, semi-undead creatures. So yeah, transformed life is a broad and juicy category. But why would you want to include transformed life in your setting? Well, the storytelling possibilities are honestly immense with transformed life. Transformed beings let you explore fundamentally human themes like death, fear, identity, memory, and even what is and is not taboo. They often reflect a culture's understanding of the soul, of the afterlife, or of the boundaries between life and death. That alone gives you a rich well of world-building material. You can also use transformed life to explore morality. Maybe becoming a werewolf is a punishment for some kind of transgression. Or maybe it's a tragic accident, like catching a supernatural disease. In that case, your society might react with fear and hatred. But what if they should be offering help and support instead? That creates a great deal of tension and moral drama in the story. You can also use transformed life to ask questions like, what does it really mean to be you? If your body or your state of being changes, are you still the same person? Maybe before the transformation, your character was kind and thoughtful, but after being cursed, their emotions are dulled, or they lose their memories, or they hunger for the souls of the innocent. Is that still them? Or is it someone new entirely? And of course, transformed life gives you access to one of the most reliable emotion engines in fiction: horror. There is something viscerally terrifying about the idea of the dead coming back. Like the thought of Granny Sue clawing her way out of the grave to eat your brains sends shivers down the spine. Or even the classic Lech, who your heroes defeated in an epic battle, blowing out half the mountains, just like a Vin Diesel movie. If you know, you know. But then the freaking thing just comes back stronger. Transformed beings can be deeply emotional, deeply thematic, and yes, deeply scary. They're powerful opponents, they're haunting reminders of mortality, and they're a fantastic tool for tension and atmosphere in your setting. Just before we dive into how to create a transformed species, give me 1 minute to invite you to sign up for my newsletter. It's free, it comes out 4 times a year, and it's got actual useful content in it for world builders. It's not just a list of what videos I think are cool. You also get to ask questions, which I will answer in the newsletter. Click on the link below to sign up or to ask any burning questions you have, and I'll get to them in the next newsletter. All right, now that we've talked about why you might want transformed life in your world, let's get into the how to create transformed life. There are 5 main ways to create transformed life in your world. Each one brings different themes, narrative opportunities, and world-building challenges. The first one is magical corruption or ritual transformation. This one is all about magic being used, either deliberately or accidentally, to transform a person. It might be a willing act or an unintended side effect of dabbling with forces best left alone. The best and most elegant example comes from J.R.R. Tolkien in the shape of the Nazgul in The Lord of the Rings. The Nazgul were once the kings of men, given rings of power by Sauron. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. Those ones. And the rings did exactly that. They corrupted the kings until they became undead wraiths, Sauron's eternal servants. Just side note, let's be honest, the whole no man can kill them in a world where elves, dwarves, hobbits, and female warriors exist, that ain't airtight protection. Like, Sauron, my guy, you had one job. Anyway, this method works beautifully in worlds with a magical system that supports corruption or transformation, especially if you have ancient forbidden knowledge in play. It pairs well with themes like power, ambition, and the cost of meddling with forces beyond mortal understanding. Method number 2 is curses, divine or arcane. So this is where a curse forcibly alters the being's form or nature. That curse might be a punishment, or it could be a twisted gift. It could even be a form of protection. A great example comes from Vampire the Masquerade, the early editions. I don't know for sure about like later editions. In that lore, vampires originate from Cain. Yeah, Cain from the Bible, who was cursed by God after killing Abel. As part of the curse, he's doomed to wander the earth forever, and he creates the first generation of vampires, and they pass it down through 13 generations until we get to the modern Night Stalkers that the players are. Another great case of cursed transformation comes from Dragonlance in the shape of Rastalin Majiri. He reaches for immense power, and he gets that power, like he achieves near divinity. But he's cursed along the way. His eyes become hourglasses, constantly showing the decay of time. Everything he sees is dying. It's poetic and it's brutal. A warning about reaching too far, and the classic be careful what you wish for moment. Curses are great for tying into religion, morality, and cultural systems. And they raise some really juicy world building questions like who can curse and why? Can curses be inherited? Can children be punished for the sins of their father? Can curses be weaponized in war or politics? And curses naturally lead to stories about redemption, fate, justice, and sometimes vengeance. Okay, our third method for transformation is supernatural disease or infection. This is where transformation spreads like a sickness through a virus, a magical plague, or a parasitic force. It might be intentional, a vampire bite, or totally random and tragic, like a fungus that ruins the world. The most well-known recent example is obviously The Last of Us, in which a fungal infection turns people into horrific mutated zombies in either the game or in the HBO series. And this method works brilliantly for post-apocalyptic settings, but it also fits well into high fantasy. Think about werewolves. You're bitten, you transform. It's a simple, terrifying spread of a disease, effectively. Using supernatural disease adds tons of tension, especially if the condition is contagious. It lets you explore fear of the unknown, societal isolation, stigma, and questions about how we treat people who are no longer considered normal. Plus, it brings the whole horror angle sharply into relief. Are you still you after infection, or are you something else? And what do you do if you are infected? The fourth way to transform is death and resurrection, or undeath. Sometimes transformation begins with death and what happens afterward. A being dies and is brought back. That can happen willingly, like a lich seeking immortality, or unwillingly, a zombie raised by that lich. The how and why of their resurrection often defines what kind of transformed creature these people become. Let's go back to Order of the Stick, where one of the big villains is a lich, a wizard and necromancer who's achieved immortality by putting his soul in a phylactery. He's powerful, terrifying, and also incredibly funny. Serious shout out to that comic strip, I love it. Another great example of this kind of transformation is, of course, from A Song of Ice and Fire. But I'm not talking about the others here, so there's some book spoilers ahead, fair warning. Beric Dondarrion is resurrected multiple times by Thoros, a red priest. But each time he returns, he loses more of himself. Eventually, he passes that blessing of resurrection onto Catelyn Stark, who comes back as Lady Stoneheart, furious, cold, and very much not the same woman she was alive. This method of transformation lets you explore taboos, soul mechanic, and the philosophical question, is resurrection a gift, a curse, or something worse? Are the undead bound to a master? Are they still themselves, or are they just echoes wearing old faces? The last form of transformation is spiritual ascension or fusion. And in this version, a being fuses with a spirit, divine essence, or elemental force, or they ascend to a higher plane entirely. The result is something new. A good example of this is Daniel Jackson from Stargate SG-1. He dies several times and eventually ascends to join the Ancients, a race of higher spiritual beings. But there are rules when he joins them. You can't interfere freely without consequences. And when he eventually decides to come back because he wants to interfere, he loses access to all the knowledge that he had. But he remembers that he once had it. This adds additional emotional complexity, and it plays into themes of loss, transcendence, and temptation. Another good example of this kind of transformation is in Avatar: The Last Airbender. The original Avatar fuses with the spirit Rava, becoming a merged being that reincarnates over generations. Each new avatar carries immense power and deep spiritual awareness, an ongoing fusion of human and divine. This method is perfect for exploring identity, purpose, and what it means to be more than mortal, or less, depending on what it is that is lost along the way. So those are the 5 main methods I see for creating transformed life in fantasy: magical corruption or rituals, curses, supernatural disease, death and resurrection, spiritual fusion, or ascension. Have I missed any? Do you use any others in your world building? Let me know in the comments. And next up, let's talk about some pitfalls to watch out for when using transformed life in your setting. So, as I see it, there are 3 main pitfalls when it comes to creating transformed life in your world. The first is overused tropes without any twists, especially with regards to the undead. I mean, we have seen vampires everywhere, from terrifying grave crawlers to sparkly boys who don't even need to drink blood. I don't even know what was going on there. Anyway, and if you just drop a trope into your world without making it your own, it feels tired. It feels boring and cliched. So instead of doing that, do this. Ask yourself, what makes my version different? What makes my version memorable? And look, I give Twilight endless crap, and rightfully so, in my opinion, because sparkling vampires, honestly, for realsies, honestly. Anyway, but I will say this for Twilight. I remember those vampires. There's no forgetting that someone made vampires that sparkled in the sun. So in that sense, Stephanie Meyer made a bold creative choice, and she succeeded. And if you want more on my thoughts of vampires through the ages, I did make a video on that, which you can check out in the information card. Now, you don't need to go to the extreme of sparkling vampires. You can just add some small twists. Maybe your vampires feed from memories instead of blood. Maybe lycanthropy is a respected warrior tradition in your world, passed down like a birthright. Or maybe necromancers raise zombies not for evil, but to help with the harvest. Imagine debates in your world about whether it's more sanitary to use mummies, skeletons, or zombies as farm laborers. Protesters picketing farms because the reanimated are unhygienic. Necromancers arguing that skeletons are biodegradable and thus are an excellent labor force. That kind of world-building twist makes the familiar suddenly feel fresh. Of course, you probably lose the horror angle at that point. Anyway, the second pitfall is ignoring the emotional and social consequences. This happens when you focus too much on how the transformation happens, magic, diseases, curses, whatever, and you forget to explore the emotional cost or social fallout. To prevent this, ask yourself, how would you feel if someone you loved crawled out of the grave and walked into your house? What if they didn't attack? What if they asked for a hug and you realize they're cold, drained, and killing you slowly just by being near you? There's horror there, but there's also deep pathos. So instead of just focusing on the mechanics, dig into the human side. How does the transformed being feel about their new state? Do they remember their past life? How does society treat them? Are they hunted, revered, pitied? Transformation should affect more than biology. It should touch the heart, the soul of your story. And the third pitfall is making transformed beings too powerful or too pitiful. This is the pitfall of extremes. On the one side, you've got beings who are just absolutely obscenely overpowered. Vampires who can fly, shoot lasers from their eyes, bench press buildings, and just literally have no weaknesses. Congratulations, your world is broken and everyone wants to be a vampire. There are literally no reasons why this world is just all vampires. On the other side, you've got a pitiful creature who just sits in the corner wailing like forgotten ghosts, one-note tragedy machines that never grow or change. Okay, I feel pity for them, but that doesn't make a story. Neither of these two extremes is satisfying. What you want is balance, some kind of tension between power and cost. If a transformation grants power, that power should come with drawbacks, social stigma, emotional loss, existential consequences. If the transformation is a curse, give the being agency, room to grow, to resist, or even to change the world in spite of their condition. Your transformed being should never be static. They should evolve, struggle, and force the characters and your audience to confront uncomfortable questions about identity, mortality, and change. What's your favorite transformed species? Let me know in the comments, or just leave a zombie emoji to let me know you made it to the end of the video. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode of this series, we're wrapping up with a look at the 5 biggest pitfalls in using non-human sapient species. If you've enjoyed this episode, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It really does help the channel. And a huge thank you to my channel members who provide me with some financial stability in the shaky world of YouTube advertising. Especially the just-in-timers of the Stone tier: Tony Lamanna, Katie Kofi Mug, Epic, Necromancer JM, A. Walyard, Neil Buckley, and Laura Bones 79. You guys are awesome. If you would like to support the channel, the easiest and free way is just to watch another video. If you like this video, you'll probably enjoy my video on creating better werewolves, which you can check out in this card, or you can watch whatever the algorithm is recommending to you right now. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time World Building.